I'm sure everybody has heard of Vinted. If not, pretty similar sites like eBay and Mercari. You know, a lot of the stuff on here is just overpriced slop. Like people selling Funko Pops for like £20, Mayfex boys figures for, oh my god, that is beautiful. One day I was just scrolling through Vinted and I found this amazing deal. And do you know what that was? It was the Transformers Legacy United Autobot 5-pack. A pretty infamous release for most collectors and a hard one to get. So hard that the only eBay listing at the moment is just the empty box for some reason. No idea who's buying that. So of course, for £25 it was an absolute steal. I ordered it straight away. I was praying to myself that this wasn't a scam. But then, a couple of days passed and it arrived. And oh my god, it was like opening the Ark of the Covenant. It was just so beautiful. And by now, I'm sure you've noticed the title of this video. You're like, well, why do you also hate this pack? Well, now it's time to go through the controversy of this pack, and I'll show you why. So, I'm sure any Transformers collector knows about the War for Cybertron trilogy. Unfortunately, yeah, that does exist. But the toy line was amazing. And especially Earthrise. As someone who loves G1, the Earthrise with like the Earth alternate modes, it was just perfect. As part of this line, we got Trailbreaker, Wheeljack, Sunstreaker, and at the same time we got Studio Series Jazz. Then, out of the blue, someone at Hasbro got the really bright idea to release this 5-pack. And you notice how I said 5-pack and only just mentioned 4 Transformers? Yeah, that's another part of the problem. So it started when someone broke into Hasbro HQ, got into their files or something like that, and found a render of Hound, which was supposed to be a Studio Series 86 figure, which makes sense, you know. He did a lot in the 86 movie, like stand around and watch Optimus die. I mean, did he do anything else? But what did Mr. Hasbro employee decide to do? He decided that actually, we're not going to release Hound separately. We're going to lock him behind a 5-pack with other Transformers that have already been released. Although I suppose technically they have gotten a better deco with this release, but we'll get onto that in a bit. Now I'm going to be going through all the figures in this pack and comparing them to their regular releases. To start off, we've got Wheeljack. I absolutely adore this figure. This mould is amazing, and it's the same as the Earthrise one, of course. Unfortunately, I do only own the Devastation version and not the Earthrise version, but they are pretty similar. For the we've got the regular version on the right and the 5-pack version on the left, although for Wheeljack there's not many difference between them both. Mostly, it is just the markings on him. For example, on the 5-pack version there's a bigger Autobot logo, and he has the 638 on the side of his vehicle mode, and he does have some different paint markings which are more accurate to the G1 cartoon. So, next up we have Autobot Jazz, one of my personal favourite figures from Studio Series, although unfortunately he doesn't have an Earthrise release, so I will be using the Studio Series 86 version, which is the one on the left, and then the 5-pack version is the one on the right. There are quite a few more differences on Jazz compared to Wheeljack. For example, the paint on his hood, the fenders and the spoilers are a lot more clean, and I personally prefer this look. As well as that, it does have the thinner red stripe running along his alt mode, and the main difference you'll have noticed by now is the windows. I personally prefer this just because it is nice, cartoon accurate, and the clear blue plastic on the Studio Series version is just prone to breaking really easily. Next up, we have Sunstreaker. He's one of the Autobots that was most underused in G1 in my opinion. Although saying that, with such a large Autobot cast, I'm sure it was hard to make time for everyone. With this figure we start to see a lot more of the changes. For example, with the Earthrise one on the right, it has different shades of yellow which really don't match, whereas the new version from the 5-pack is a much nicer looking yellow/orange. As well as this, he just has a lot more paint with the silver and grey paint taps on the back, as well as an extra Autobot logo on his feet. Once again, he just has the way nicer cel-shaded windows instead of that weird clear plastic. And finally, he even includes an actual blaster for him, instead of that weird vent gun which a single release has. Next we have Trailbreaker, another Autobot that really doesn't appear much in G1. This guy definitely has the most differences between the two. For starters, the entire colour of the 5-pack version is this weird grey, whereas the Earthrise version is just a nicer matte black, which I do prefer, and looks more accurate to G1. Although, the 5-pack version does win me back with the cel-shaded windows that actually carry on to the side, whereas on the Earthrise version, there's the clear one on the front, but then the rest are just moulded black. Not sure why this has been done, maybe just like a cost-cutting measure, but having the windows that are painted blue just looks a lot more accurate and a lot nicer in my opinion. Some final little details to mention is the 5-pack version having no outline around the Autobot logo, which I think just looks a bit cleaner. And then the red, orange and yellow markings, there's only 3 of those on the 5-pack version, where there's a lot more on the Earthrise version. And once again, it's just more accurate to G1. As well as that, the actual weapons on the top of Trailbreaker have paint on them, which the Earthrise doesn't have. Trailbreaker definitely has to be the biggest improvement for me out of all of these figures. Finally, we get to talk about Hound. What a cool figure. I've been yearning for this guy for ages. There is a Siege version with a Cybertronian alt mode, but I'm not a fan of it, I'm not gonna lie. Like, yes, it looks like Hound, but it's not my mind's eye version of Hound. And that's what that's what I want my collection to be. My mind's eye version of characters. And speaking of mind's eye, I just love the Army Jeep for Hound. It's such a cool and unique design and fits in with the G1 aesthetic just so well. I mean, and then there's the Bayverse version, but we don't need to talk about that slop. Anyway, the wait for Hound has made it also worth it. Not to mention that I basically only paid for him and got the rest of these figures for free. Just messing around with him is just so much fun. He's definitely going to be a desk figure for a while. Overall, I do love this set, even if it is a scummy release from Hasbro. The improvements to all the figures definitely make it worth it for me, although I do need to take the price I paid into account. Obviously this was a steal, but at full price, not to mention the aftermarket price, I definitely see why so many people dislike this pack, especially as it's the only way to get Hound in his Earth form, which is a shame. Unfortunately, this is a practice that Hasbro are using a lot. For instance, when the Kingdom line came out, they released Galvatron with some weird little shit stains on him. Then they released him again under Legacy with no stains. And then once again, they've just released him on the Studio Series 86, and it is the correct purple instead of this weird bright purple. It's a really scummy practice that I just wish they'd stop, but I know they won't. They do it with every other line that they own, like Black Series for example. They'll release like a really bad version of one figure, and then they'll release another one with slightly more improvements in like less than 6 months later. But other than that, I absolutely adore this pack. It's one of my favourite pickups of 2026 so far. Make sure to leave your opinion on this pack in the comments below, and not to mention your opinion on these scummy practices that Hasbro are using. As always, I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.